So if you're looking for something to do this weekend, why not head on over to the Joburg Film Festival, which opens its doors today. And tomorrow there'll be a whole conversation around the film industry and women's participation at Constitution Hill. I'm still joined in studio by Sheila Muniva, who stars in the film Rafiki, as well as Angie Mills, the festival director. Angie, it's great that we're having these conversations amongst ourselves as women trying to find these solutions. But are we inviting men to the table? Do men know about our challenges? Do men care about our challenges? Are they willing to help change the status quo?
I think that of course there are men who are concerned and who want to stand in solidarity with women, but I'm not sure that the majority are necessarily that interested right now or in a position to maybe take on the debate and nuances of the debate. But I also think that by organizing and by articulating, we essentially are able to, to encourage people at least to take on the matter. And I think it's going to be a slow process, but it's not an impossible one to get people to the same table as people and not necessarily in this gendered frame.
Sheila, are you excited by the direction that African film is going or taking?
Absolutely. To see the number of films that are now coming out of Africa every single year, that is so encouraging and it's so wonderful. And not just regular films, like award-winning films. We're going all the way to Cannes, we're doing all the big festivals. And other than that, to see African creators also taking stage in Hollywood and all those other big platforms, it's quite encouraging and wonderful. And even as we continue with the conversations to do with gender, it's also interesting then to see how women are also emerging in the same content as well. So absolutely wonderful.
Are we appreciating the content that you are giving us, though? Internationally, films do incredibly well that are from the continent, but on this continent, as consumers, are we supporting you?
I tell you what, when the ban was lifted for Rafiki for the 7 days in Kenya, every single night we sold out because people wanted to show up and show out and watch the film. And every single African country that I've gone to as well, it's been the same case. So what we're seeing is that as Africans, we are hungry for our own content. So every time it's put out there and it's well done, people absolutely do come out and watch. And I think that's quite wonderful. Yeah.
Angie, just to extend on that point of us appreciating and actually consuming some of the work that's been put out. I remember with Kalushi, it was taken down from theatres within just a couple of weeks because people are not going there. So what we don't realize is that a film stays on circuit for a longer time because people are watching it. If no one is watching it, it won't stay on circuit.
This question of the audience is a big one. So I think that's part of what we wanted to do with the Joburg Film Festival, was to encourage people to return to the cinema-going experience, which is not just about the film, but it's about the whole experience of watching something with a group of people, with your partner, to make it an event, to go out. That's why the tickets are also more affordable. We wanted to encourage people to consider something that they might not otherwise, because they might, it seems out of reach or not a natural choice. And we have to grow that. And I think it is a way of re-enchanting people with the cinema. So I also think that's not impossible. I think because if you think about how people are going back to vinyl, how people are, reconnecting in a nostalgic way with other kinds of engagement, I think that the cinema, we're talking about stories, and stories are the heart of our everyday lives. And it doesn't matter, are we gossiping, are we, are we telling our stories in terms of our work or lives, but we're always telling stories. And in the case of cinema, it comes through the film. And that's a particular experience because you're entering the imagination and the interpretation of somebody's fantasy or realism or fascination with a particular genre. Like So the Winter being a period piece, and Five Fingers for Marseille being something that's like a Western. And it just gives us different ways to explore ourselves as people and how we connect to others. And I think that if we start to understand how important that is to our sense of personhood, then I think we can reclaim the cinemas.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this festival is going to be part of that effort, and that's what we're really trying to do.
Right. Sheila, we cannot talk about the barriers to entry without looking at finances, which is a big issue in South Africa when it comes to the film space, and I'm sure Angie can attest to that. Are we finding the same situation in Kenya?
Absolutely. With the film Rafiki, Wanuri took about 7 years just getting finances before she could do the film. 7 years knocking on doors, and unfortunately we couldn't get financing anywhere in Africa, including South Africa. No one wanted to touch the film. But then when we looked abroad, money was then put in, and delaying a project for 7 years because of money, I think, you know, it's not the best show, and I think also it's a challenge that we face heavily in Kenya. We don't have an active sort of film fund or art scene that that's going on there. So financing is one of those challenges that kills a lot of dreams and kills a lot of scripts. And we're very lucky for Rafiki, we did manage to get funding, but none of it came from Africa whatsoever.
I'm not shocked. Just annoyed, because this seems to be the common theme, I beg your pardon, and also here in South Africa. What do we do? Because internationally you get so appreciated, and then when the films come here, we want to claim them and say, that is our productions, proudly this, proudly that. Then we throw money into it. Once we see that internationally it's gaining momentum, does this speak to a lack of pride about telling our own stories and who we are as a people?
I think it's that audience problem. And so the way that you encourage the audience is because it can make that circuit, it garners enough marketing for people to pay attention. So that's probably the main issue. So if you're putting it out and it's local and you have a little bit of marketing budget and so on, it might interest a few people. Some films have taken off, like Ellen is doing really well. And remember when the film Happiness is a Four-Letter Word came out? I think there was about 45,000 people who went to that on that first opening weekend. Five Fingers from Marseille did very well. So maybe there's also, that is the story in terms of that's something that's been in the air. But I think there's also a shift happening. And I think it also has to do with the narratives, because they are getting more and more real. It doesn't have to be this overarching story about a great person who goes through something difficult and then always ends up like the hero. It's now about small stories, everyday lives, things that people can connect to. And even if the genre is big, but the thematics and the relationships between the characters are very intimate. So I think we're really seeing a burgeoning of South African cinema from my point of view. I do think South Africa is a very supportive space for film. I know that's probably a surprising thing to say, but also just talking to Sheila in terms of, the kinds, we also, there's also like a struggle for the finance, and it takes time, but there are bodies and mechanisms. The National Film and Video Foundation, the DTI rebate.
You speak to a lot of filmmakers, and they talk about the struggles that they face with those bodies, because first of all, in order to even fill out an application, it's like a 40-page document, and creatives and 40-page documents don't go in the same breath.
That's not different from Europe. It's not different from the States. Financing is a complicated game, and so in that sense, it's the graft of it. But at least we have that possibility. I think to not have it at all will be very, very, I mean, at least we're seeing some, and we have distribution points. We have television distribution points, and we have cinemas. So we have, we have ways in which we can, it just takes time, and that is true. And that is the hard part of it, because you have to make a living, somehow 100%. in the middle.
Sheila, let's talk about the beauty of telling our own stories. You take a look at Nollywood. That is such a thriving industry on this continent. It gives Bollywood and Hollywood a run for its money, and it receives so much support. Such a rich industry there. Let's talk about the beauty of telling African stories. Why do you do it?
You know, first of all, we need to understand how huge Africa as a continent is and how many we are in number. And so to be able to see films from Nigeria that depict, like she said, our everyday stories, things that are simplistic, things that happen to us day to day, that's why it's such a thriving, you know, thriving state, and that's why they're doing so well with their films. And for me, the passion is, for the longest time growing up, it was very hard to find films of people of color that I could identify with. So now we're seeing sort of like the race, and we're seeing an emergence of films from Africa with good representation, and that's why they're being received so well, because then now you can sit down and you can see your aunt represented, you can see yourself represented, and there's a sense of pride, you know, when it comes to that. So for me, also as an upcoming filmmaker, I'm very encouraged by the narratives that are coming from Africa, and I think more than anything, that's the magic of it all. Yeah.
I'm already seeing you getting your Oscar speech or your Emmy speech.
Thank you.
You know, we're ready for that. We're there. Angie, give us details. How much damage? What time? Where do you go?
So the Cinema Nouveau Rosebank is where people can buy tickets at the venue or book online. So all the films are up on the Joburg Film Festival website, and you can read about them on the website, but you can also go to the Cinema Nouveau website as well. And you can buy tickets there. Today we're having a free screening at King's. We also have screenings at Mapunya Mall.
Okay. Awesome. And tomorrow at Con Hill?
And tomorrow, Constitution Hill. Just come on time, 2 o'clock to... we'll see where it goes.
Just come on time. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your star has only just begun to shine. Looking forward to so many amazing things from you.
Thank you so much.
Angie, thank you for the work that you do. And we'll definitely see you tomorrow
at
Con Hill. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for joining us.